then there's the one that I focused on that is of the greatest concern to me. Not that the other ones aren't, but this one is the greatest concern. It's what we call the housing specialist position, or the housing coordinator position. And this, that's a very vital role, vital position that's needed. And that person actually, and even their predecessor, used to work, you know, as if they were across the board for the whole agency, not just mental health, but yet the majority of their work was, you know, for people being served by the mental health system, excuse me. And especially for people in the mental health system, housing's not only key need, but it's a very serious unmet need.
Right.
And people end up, by default, either in the state hospital or in other institutional settings sometimes, in large part, and this is well known, you know, the people even that work at the state hospital that says, yeah, we get people here that gets, you know, they get stuck there because they got no place to go.
Just to have a roof over their head.
You know,
right?
well, it's not all of it, but it's a big part of it. And there is, it makes no sense to be cutting this position at all.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing they could be doing.
So that person who will, it looks like, be eliminated unless something's worked out. They work on getting transitional housing, or
across the board. It's housing and every, you know, permanent housing, transitional housing, you know, any kind of housing situation you can think of.
right.
And related needs. And they do all kinds of advocacy, you know, from the top down and back again. You
Right.
know? And I've even worked with them personally myself. You know, there's been times where they've helped out my situation.
There is an argument from the right that, let's see if I can formulate it, that why would we want in Vermont to have a functioning social service system? Because if we do, it'll bring people from other states that don't have fun. You've heard this argument, I'm sure, and I'm just wondering what your rebuttal is. There's also that argument that it's too cold to have homeless people here. They all go to California, right? They get on the bus. So those are sort of a couple of devil advocacy things to throw at you. Just wondering what you might have to say about either.
Okay, so what was the first one?
The first one being that if we have a good social safety net here, if we build then people who don't have jobs, who are looking for social services from other
outside?
states, they're going to come here. It's going to be sort of a negative draw for this state. I mean, that's a real argument that people use when we talk about cutting social services.
Yet they seem to forget that the reality is more people are leaving the state because they don't have the things here that they need to stay here. And so I would call that a convenient myth, convenient rationalization. There might be some people that come, but most of them, well, hey, I'm a flatlander. You know why I came to Vermont? It wasn't for the social services system. You know, it wasn't to live in a homeless shelter or in the woods.
It wasn't for
the mental health services.
Right.
It wasn't for the soup kitchens. You know, and I'm not downing those. You know, but it was for why most people come to live to Vermont.
Right.
You know, and ask most people why they're here.
Yeah.
You know, it's the way of life, and it's a slower pace, and it's the being able to talk to you or somebody else on the street I don't even know and strike up a conversation.
Yeah.
And you know, it doesn't mean we become friends, but you know, it's like, hey, you know,
Right.
I thrive in that, you know, that kind of environment. That's the kind of environment I need. That's why I'm here. It isn't for, you those other things.
Yeah,
And
it is a strange argument, but I've heard it forwarded.
I've had a person tell me I should move out to Arizona and live in the desert. I wouldn't know how to live. You know, why should I be a refugee? You know, in my my own area of the country. I mean,
Right.
you know, I'm born and bred in New England, and I wouldn't know how to deal with life outside. You know, this climate. You know,
Yeah.
this is what I know,
Yeah.
and I love winter. A little less than
I'm
I
sure
used
you
to.
already miss it, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know, this might be a little detour, but Vermont definitely has this sort of, you know, who quote unquote really belongs and who's an outsider mentality to it that I think it actually hurts economic development. I mean, I actually think this sort of hope to create a decent economy here with that sort of, you know, flatlanders keep out mentality can be a real hindrance to that.
I think I probably could do a lot better if I could drop my accent, but I'm stuck with it.
Oh, well, we're all Sox fans here, and the first Vermonters came from, you know, well, the first Vermonters were natives, but first Vermonters came from up the rivers anyways, from Connecticut and Mass. But yeah, it is amazing if you go to somewhere like California to realize that these little tiny states back here actually distinguish themselves in very strong ways. You know, New Hampshire versus Vermont, and you know it's hard to explain to someone from the West Coast that they really are different states. They're not just sort of like counties. But yeah, New England is a single entity, huh? Let's see. There's another movement going on in the. I don't know if where it's coming from, if the legislature has to decide about it, but what is this Futures Project? And recently you were part of a letter sort of expressing concern about it. If you could explain what that is, that would be really, really helpful.
The Futures Project grew out of previous projects that the Department of Mental Health did. Mainly, if I remember correctly, my memory of it is the Futures Project grew out of after the 2 suicides about 6 years ago, and the feds basically pull funding.
Those were
from the state hospital.
In the state facility, right?
The Vermont State Hospital. There was a real crisis there, especially a big hole in the budget. And anyway, the Futures Project was a way to try to address that. I'm not sure if there was an element of it before, but anyway, as I recall, it grew out of that. And we still talk about it like it's still an active thing, but in part, it still sort of exists in a certain sense, but they've actually moved on to something they call the Transformation Council.
Okay.
But that's sort of like, unless people are sort of on the insider groups and stuff, most people don't know too much, not only about futures, but especially about this Transformation Council, because it's just not very widely known or understood what it is, and I'm not even sure. I know.
Their reform efforts, is that fair to say? They're
yeah.
an attempt to change, reform, fix the
Well,
mental health system in Vermont? Or?
Some people won't like this, but I'm going to say it honest, at least as I see it. The dog and pony shows, basically, for the most part.
We're doing something, kind of.
The appearance of change, but not really anything real or meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are some people who are part of it that are trying, but most of those are advocates and concerned citizens. The ones with the real power, of course, they keep blaming the advocates for the problems of why things are happening, but I'm sorry, but It's the other way around.